Welcome to The Road. This is a weekly podcast of All Saints Lutheran Church. I'm your host, John Pedersen, and I serve as pastor. Each week, we reflect on faith, life, and navigating the road ahead. The language of journey is common when we think about life. It has its joys and challenges along the way, and we all need a little encouragement and guidance at times to keep us going. There's a word in the Bible, asphalia, which means truth, but it's the same root word we use in English for asphalt, if you can believe that. It's a solid surface that makes travel easier and more assured. And so every week we're going to be exploring elements of faith and life that keep us on the road. Faith isn't about living a perfect life. It's about finding our way, getting through rough spots, but seeking out those great vistas too. You can find my weekly message here, but you'll also find special conversations with guests who have insights on things like wellness, parenting, and living with unique purpose. If you appreciate this podcast, remember to subscribe where possible and share it with a friend. Here's this week's message. Well, we started this series with the story of Jesus being baptized and the heavens opening and the Spirit descending on him like a dove. We spoke about those moments when the separation between heaven and earth seemed to be removed. Some of you have had moments when you sensed God's presence or glimpsed something of what is eternal. And we might experience this at heightened moments like a birth or death, but other times may be unexpected in the presence of some moment of awe and mystery in the course of life or in the natural world. South spoke about thin places, and in Celtic Christianity there's a saying that heaven and earth are only 3 feet apart, but in thin places they are even closer. St. Patrick captured this ever-present sense of God's presence in his famous breastplate prayer. I arise today through God's strength to pilot me, God's might to uphold me, God's wisdom to guide me, God's eye to look before me, God's ear to hear me, God's word to speak for me, God's hand to guard me, God's way to lie before me, God's shield to protect me, God's hosts to save me. Today's passage from Matthew speaks of Jesus being transfigured into something like light itself. And in that moment, a cloud moves over the mountaintop thereon, and a voice comes from the cloud. Moses famously felt the presence of God in the middle of a cloud atop another mountain. And out of this cloud comes visions of Moses and Elijah, 2 great prophets of history. Again, like at his baptism, it seems that a portal to heaven has opened. This comes just shortly after Jesus tells his disciples that he will undergo suffering and be killed and then rise again. And Peter doesn't like this. Peter's hopes are for the promised Messiah to be a conquering rebel against the Roman occupiers and achieve some kind of earthly kingdom. But Jesus rebukes him in that moment, and he tells the disciples, if any wish to come after me, let them deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For what will it profit them if they gain the whole world but forfeit their soul? It would be hard not to see this transfiguration experience and not be taken by its power and wonder. If you imagine yourself by the side of Peter, James, and John in that moment on the mountain, what kinds of feelings and thoughts would it evoke for you? Maybe some kind of awe and humility. Perhaps it would give you some sense of assurance and peace about who Jesus is. Or maybe, like the disciples, the whole experience might just frighten you. We see how Peter initially reacts to witnessing this when the face of Jesus is transformed into the sun and his clothes bright as light, with Moses and Elijah standing by his side. Some of us might be moved to silence, but Peter speaks up. Peter said to Jesus, Lord, it's good for us to be here. If you wish, I will set up 3 tents here, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. Peter wants to take charge. That's the polite description. Another way of saying it is that he has control issues. It seems like he wants to contain this powerful event and preserve it. This is the same disciple who just verses ago argued with Jesus about any talk of weakness and what would end in the cross for Jesus. Now it seems like his eyes are alive again with possibility and otherworldly power, but he's immediately interrupted. While he was still speaking, suddenly a bright cloud overshadowed them, and a voice from the cloud said, "This is my Son, the beloved. With him I am well pleased. Listen to him." Not all of us may have responded like Peter did, but all of us have the same human instinct to want to manage and control things somehow. In recent days, I had to drive south on 35W and then come back, and many of you may be familiar with the unusual road sign that is along 35W through that stretch. The sign has lights that flash when the road is icy on otherwise dry days due to snowmaking from the ski hill. Author Hartmut Rosa opens his book, The Uncontrollability of the World, with the image of snow, which we may still see again in the coming days. He's not talking about the snow we manufacture with snow cannons at ski resorts, but the snow that falls unexpectedly and brings wonder as a gift. There's something about natural, uncontrollable snow that impacts us deeply. It comes as a gift and as grace beyond our control. You can pause and just look at it as it falls outside with a cup of coffee or tea in your hand. It's a beautiful thing. It brings peace. But what Rosa notices, especially in our modern world, is that we're suspicious of gifts and things that we can't manage and control. Controlling and manipulating just about anything is something we have come to value greatly, and we expect it. Our economy is based on control. We love our modern conveniences, especially looking at the snow from inside our warm home, right? I occasionally tell people that if there's ever a zombie apocalypse, I'm toast. I'm not trained for wilderness survival. But Rosa says, it is only in encountering the uncontrollable that we really experience the world. Only then do we feel touched, moved, alive. A world that is fully known, in which everything has been planned and mastered, would be a dead world. Theologian Tripp Fuller puts it this way: here's the terrible irony. The more we bring the world under control, the more it withdraws from us. Rosa describes a world that has gone mute, cold, gray, silent. Seasons lose their meaning when we've controlled our environment. When everything is available, nothing calls to us anymore. We have conquered so much and we feel so empty. We want to have transcendent and meaningful experiences, but like Peter, we rely on control so often to create that. We want to remove mystery from things, or at least harness the mystery. You may find yourself longing for greater meaning, connection, and wonder in life. The question for you is, do you make space for unexpected things to happen? Do you leave space for silence? Are you willing to notice ironies about yourself, to engage with people not like you, to leave open possibilities, to be inspired and surprised? The reminder in this series is that God's presence is imminent. God shows up. We see that in the story of the Transfiguration. But I'm not in control of that. You're not either. And as unexpectedly as it comes, we have to be okay with it departing us. We're invited to hold some space open for God to show up, and not in the expectant way that a parent might turn the porch light on when your teen is out late, waiting for them to come home, and when they're not home by 10 p.m., you're worried and frustrated and impatient. Even as we may be worried about the state of the world or something happening in our personal life, can we learn to just take a deep breath and just sit for a minute in silence? Ask God to help us navigate whatever is going on. And in that expectation, we're not impatiently waiting for all of our problems to be magically solved, but we're allowing room for something beyond our expectation and control to happen. Can we trust that as we move forward in action, that even as we are trying to affect some change or experience something, that God is at work too, and we can watch for that? Author and pastor Kara Root reflects on these same ideas when she says, "We modern people are moving so fast under so much pressure that we meet the world and those around us as points of aggression. conflicts to wage, problems to solve, tasks to complete, lists to check off, goals to accomplish. We're pushed to maximize our potential, optimize our actions, and instrumentalize our relationships, pursuing unending increase without pause or completion. The great parent, the excellent pastor, the ideal congregation, it is only good if it is always getting better. If we're not improving, we're declining, and if we're declining, we're doomed. Growth is our God. But into this anxious and relentless acceleration breaks these beautiful, unforced experiences of engagement and resonance. Suddenly, we hear the world speaking to us. We sense our underlying, unbreakable connection to all others. We're summoned by something beyond ourselves. We feel ourselves answer back in some way, and we're changed by the uncontrollable encounter. A moment of eye contact when you are seen and see another truly. Holding someone while they're sobbing, being snapped into focus by the power of the pounding waves at your feet, or helplessly swept up in the soprano's soaring aria. In our most profound and elemental human moments, we are awakened to life. So how do we listen? How can we place ourselves alongside Peter, James, and John on the mountain and allow for moments of imminent wonder around us without trying to contain it or control it when it does happen? Well, we can join in community like we are today. We can offer ourselves and what we have in service to others. We can share sacred words and music passed down through the ages, and perhaps there will be moments of resonance. We can reflect on the life and work of those who have gone before us. Lindisfarne is an historic tidal island off the Northumberland coast, accessible only by a causeway or mudflats at low tide. It was founded in 635 AD by Saint Aidan, and it became a pivotal center for early English Christianity. On the island are the ruins of a 12th century monastery, a 16th century castle, and a small, vibrant community. Remaining stones from the church's foundation still date back to 635. It's a pilgrimage site today, and inside the church there's a framed list of every prior, bishop, or vicar that has served that church, dating back to 635 all the way to the present. But there's about a 300-year period when no one was leading the church there. The church had been raided and ruined by Vikings. And yet the church and the ministry continued on after that period. What must have seemed like a permanent and irreversible setback was not the end. Faith and hope endures even when it seems impossible, even when we are not the ones to see it restored. The part of the story and the life that we witness is real, but it's also only part of the story. We have responsibilities in this moment. We are called to be a witness to God's grace, truth, and life in our time, and what it means for how we should live today, and what it means for our family and our neighbors and our communities. We do so with no guarantees about how it will be heard or lived out, but we can trust that God continues to be at work and present in ways that we can't fully anticipate, and we certainly can't control. Over the course of this series, we have been witnesses to momentous events in our community and in the history of our nation. We can't know exactly what our future holds, but we are called to be faithful in every time and place. The late Peter Gomes, theologian from Harvard Divinity School, spoke about the idea of thin places, and he said, "Perhaps the ultimate of these thin places in the human condition are the experiences people are likely to have as they encounter suffering, joy, and mystery." In other words, sometimes it's where our greatest hopes and tragedies intersect that God's proximity is revealed to us, not because God brings about any specific events in history, good or bad, but because even on the cross, Jesus is present with us, particularly in those moments when we call out in despair and confusion and disbelief. And as within the cloud on the mountain, or within fog on some distant hill, God can be present when we are overjoyed and overwhelmed by the beauty and awesome wonder of this life in all its mystery. It was after witnessing these things that Jesus came and touched his disciples, saying, "Get up and do not be afraid." And when they raised their eyes, they saw no one except Jesus himself alone. And so may you rise today with confidence and an assurance of God's loving presence with you and with us together, prepared for the work ahead, and trusting in God to uphold you, to guide you, to look before you, to hear you, to speak for you, to guard you, to lie before you, to protect you, and to save you. Amen. That's this week's message. You don't have to navigate the road ahead alone. You can join with others at All Saints. Visit allsaintsmtka.org for more information. Have a great week.